Welcome to Ecosystems Under Fire,
Bienvenue à Écosystème menacé.
Restorative Practices and Environmental Justice.
Les pratiques
This is
réparatoires et
the
la justice
final of
environnementale.
3 sessions
Ceci est
on
la dernière
community
des
and
3 sessions
environmental justice.
sur la
We are
justice
joined by
des
3
communautés et
incredible
l'environnemental. Nous
panelists
sommes
who are
rejoints par
scholars
3
and
panélistes
champions on
remarquables
this
qui sont des
topic.
champions sur ce sujet.
Today, we will discuss a
Aujourd'hui, on nous en
systemic approach
discuter l'approche
to address the
systémique
impact
pour
of global
répondre
climate change in
aux effets
vulnerable and
du changement
marginalized
climatique,
communities, inclusive of a restorative environmental agenda and its application here in the United States and globally. Before I introduce our panelists, I want to thank our conference sponsor, Open Society Foundation, and our event sponsor, AgVisor Pro, for supporting our 2023 World Conference. Restorative practices is about alleviating social imbalances. We live in a world today where the people and the systems that are responsible for producing food and humanity are under pressure to produce much more than they're able to, with far fewer resources than they need. AgVisor Pro's mission is to provide them with tools that connect them to expert solutions, answers, and technology in order to better integrate our agri-food chain. AgVisor Pro gives confidence to agriculture decision makers to help farmers improve profitability, make agriculture more sustainable, and enhance global food security, one question at a time. The environmental and social consequences of this are transformative, and it is why their values and mission align with those of the IIRP. Visit the AgVisor Pro exhibitor booth and website at getagvisorpro.com to learn more about the wonderful work they're doing. And you can also visit Open Society Foundation Baltimore at www.osibaltimore.org/restorative practices to learn more about the incredible restorative practices work happening across the city of Baltimore. Let's do some housekeeping before we start the discussion. If you've not already, please put in the chat where you're joining from. We would also like to encourage you to participate actively in the chat. When you do, be sure to select all panelists and attendees. Remember that closed captioning is available for this session if you choose to select it, and language interpretation is available in Spanish, Portuguese, and French. Please share your questions using the QA button located on your Zoom panel, and we will address them at the end of our panel discussion. And importantly, we really hope you enjoy this session. Let's meet our panelists. Paula Swinford is a nationally recognized leader in health promotion and is faculty at the Keck School of Medicine, Department of Family Medicine, and has her MS in Community Health from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign and her MHA in Healthcare Administration from the University of Southern California. Paula is a board member of the Council for Advancement of Standards in Higher Education and advisor to Healthier Princeton, and an executive editor of the Journal of American College Health. At USC, Paula heads up a robust office for health promotion strategy that serves as the backbone for the USC Wellbeing Collective, a collective impact effort with a common agenda of strengthening a campus culture driven by well-being. She currently oversees staff who focus on research, communication, capacity building, and community engagement. Welcome, Paula. Dr. Malik Muhammed is founder and CEO of Akoben, LLC, a professional development company, and Transforming Lives, Inc., a provider of alternative education services, both of which he founded. He has a master's in educational leadership from the College of Notre Dame of Maryland and an EDD in educational leadership from the University of Delaware. He's also the author of The Restorative Journey, Book 1, The Theory and Application of Restorative Practices, and contributing author of the recently released Colorizing Restorative Justice, Voicing Our Realities. Dr. Muhammed is a former principal, career and college president, corporate director of education, regional vice president of a national mental health care organization, and former instructor with the IIRP. Welcome, Dr. Muhammed. Lucy Jaffé is the director of Why Me? Transforming Lives Through Restorative Justice, and has built up over the last 11 years to fulfill the founder's vision of full and fair access to restorative justice for everyone affected by crime and conflict. She has a background in victim rights campaigns for justice and co-founded and developed Reunite, the National Council for Abducted Children to prevent international parental abduction of children and obtain their rightful return to the UK, which has been a successful nonprofit running for over 30 years. Lucy has co-authored papers with the European Forum on Restorative Justice on the use of restorative justice to address violent extremism. She is a board trustee of the Criminal Justice Alliance in the UK, on the National Advisory Board of the Victims Commissioner, the Advisory Board of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Restorative Justice in the UK, and the Advisory Board of the Stronger Voices program, which trains NGOs to elevate marginalized voices in communications and the media. Welcome, Lucy. So let's get the discussion started. Paula, please take about 3 to 5 minutes to help us understand what is planetary health and why is planetary and community health critical to environmental justice? What needs to happen for continuous leadership in planetary and community health and environmental justice?
Well, thank you, Gina. It's really exciting to be here with you all. And there's a lot to cover here, but I'm going to try to be concise, just setting the stage. I think as we think about planetary health and community health and environmental justice, having participated in this conference, I realize that I have a lot more to learn about all of these things. However, I will bring to this conversation that there is an emerging term that's out there that I think might give us space to begin to create new language around this work that we're all doing. And that's the word well-being. And oftentimes well-being gets thrown out as a mental health or a financial stability a term. And the World Health Organization just last year took it upon itself to define well-being for the very first time. And while I won't read you the definition, I will tell you that several scholars around the world are looking at this definition and realizing that there is a nod towards well-being being a construct that is highly communal and sits somewhere at the intersection of human health and sustainability, which is the livelihood of human civilization, planetary health, and then these concepts that we have around equity and justice. And so as I talk about these definitions, if you'll kind of relate them to the concept of well-being, I think that could be helpful. It gives us an open space. So planetary health is, from the way we're looking at it in the academy, is simply put, who gets the right to live in an intact ecosystem. And we feel fairly confident that the planet will survive if humans are not on it. It will look different, but it has a lifespan that far exceeds what we think of and what we can imagine. However, as we think about planetary health, it is, are there intact ecosystems, and who gets to, well, environmental justice is who gets to be in that intact ecosystem. So planetary health is an intact ecosystem. Environmental justice is who gets the right to be in that intact ecosystem. And then I think the term community health actually was the most difficult that I was thinking about this, because that was my first degree, or that was my master's degree so long ago. And community health is not a term that gets used much anymore in the academy, at least in the worlds that I'm in. It has been substituted here in the States for the term population health. And I want to really acknowledge that those are not synonymous. Those are not the same thing. Population health is a way that healthcare kind of tries to wrap its head around the fact that there are a bunch of individuals together that may have the same condition. Community health at its core, as I think all of these terms are, is highly relational. It is the power of a community to do something that no one individual can do. And I am very expansive in my thinking about community, because quite honestly, I think oftentimes we think about human communities when in fact we are far more impacted by other species, and how they interact with us and what humans do. And for those of you who know anything about Los Angeles, so recently P22 died. And P22 was a mountain lion that lived in Griffith Park, right in the middle of the city. And P22, 20 years ago, set the city on fire with the idea that this big boy could live out there and survive while the rest of us went about our business. People would look at the Hollywood sign and say, "Oh, isn't that fancy?" And I would say, "Yeah, that's P22's home." So with community health, I think I would ask us to really begin to think about what is our community and how do we define community. So I will leave it there. Hopefully there are some pieces there that panelists can jump off on.
Thank you, Paula. Listening to what Paula just shared, in a few minutes, what are your thoughts, Dr. Muhammed, about planetary and community health? And Lucy, please also take a few minutes to respond to both points of view after Dr. Muhammed.
Thank you, Dr. Abrams, for that invitation into the conversation. And Paula, I really like how you framed the conversation around well-being and then expanding it, right? That we're not talking about just individualized well-being, but really community well-being, and this notion of the planet not only being sort of that cover and that mother that embraces us, but also a member of the community, right? Maybe even one of the most important members of the community. But we think about community well-being as inclusive of the planet and the planet's people. And so, I want to be honest in that, I haven't used the terms environmentalists and conservativists to really, conservationists to really think and describe myself, right? I have, if we think about this work as really having folks that are passionate about it, falling into the roles of either, activist, advocates or organizer, I would certainly think of myself as an organizer. And organizers are those who are rooted inside of the community and trying to activate the community to really solve conditions, challenges that are adversive to the community. Of course, now thinking of it inclusive of the planet. And so, but in thinking about this in community and planetary health, I do think it's important to really reflect on where is the entry point for each of us individually, right? And where is that piece that really calls us and speaks to and pulls us into the work? And for my own self, I think about, in sharing my own biography, I do talk about being born into a womb of trauma, right? I was born 3 months after my biological father died. So my mother was 6 months pregnant with me when she had to put on the black dress, take care of my toddler age brother, and then 3 months later, birthed me. But what I often don't share is that my biological father died of lung cancer as caused by asbestos. So when we think about planetary and community health and our relationship at the personal level and community level to this work, what I think about is the very clear and personal relationship that I have to the destruction of our planet, of our environment, and its corresponding impact, especially on marginalized Black and Brown and Indigenous bodies, my father being one of them. So he lived 50 years on this planet, and then succumbed to the toxicity of asbestos, right? As well as a criminal, racist, anti-human system, right? Which put his Black body as front and center of this work. So when I think about my relationship to planetary and community health, I'm really thinking about it from being called, required to do something about this work before my very birth, right? So birthed into this responsibility to organize the community. And I think about the health of the planet and the planet's people as also involving privilege, bias, power. And so therefore, the work of environmental justice is wrapped into social justice, is wrapped into equity, right? because all of us are not treated equal by capitalism, by anti-human systems, right? And some of us are exposed more to some of the destructiveness of systems. So this is, in very real sense, in my view, a question around not only the health of the planet, but the health of people. And so I'd like to bring that into the conversation.
Thank you. Lucy?
Oh, that was incredible, Malik. Thank you. And Paula, my thoughts on well-being stem from the work that we do in the UK, where we really push for people to have the right to opt for restorative justice if they are subject to a criminal act. And it has become increasingly apparent to me that you cannot simply deliver restorative justice without taking into account the context of the act, the history of the people who are involved, then the way in which the state responds to that and steps between those people and comes up with a solution and imposes it upon them, and the danger that we have in coming up in the state adopting and co-opting restorative practices, which then act against the well-being, in the name of well-being, act against the well-being of us all. And so it has to have, we always have to work within a context of well-being, which is why your second point, Paula, about community, I think is absolutely critical, because therein lies the context of the people and the place where the act took place, or where the situation occurs, but also where the solution lies. And I love colorizing restorative justice. I just find it so inspiring. I keep going back to it, Malik, because that you were involved in producing that, I know, because I think it asks really, really strong questions about equity, and the equitable access, and who's in the room, and who is community. And I'd like to go on and speak about, discuss that later, particularly when we come to talk about what do we do next and who needs to be involved. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Paula, in your work with higher education, what are the long-term consequences, impacts caused by global environmental change? Who's most at risk? And what is the research telling us?
I have to say that I want to I say that higher education itself may be most at risk. The academy was built on structures that may not be flexible enough to take us into the new world. And so I say humbly, to answer your question, that the answers coming out of at least the academy in the States, are definitive if you want to look at them, but they are unfortunately not necessarily contextualized. So there's a lot of othering that goes on. The planet will this, and this will happen to the climate, and and even that we say, and one other speaker made this point earlier on in the conference, but even that we talk about it as climate change rather than the greenhouse gas effect, because it's the greenhouse gas effect that we're talking about, and climate change is a result, and there's all kinds of other results. But so I worry about the credibility of higher education. However, that said, I do think that fortunately that there is a push to do cross-disciplinary work that allows a pause around rushing to conclusions. So it allows us to look at contextually what climate change will mean for different populations in different parts of the world, and that the reality is, is that people want to think that they can hold themselves separate. And there's a lot of, well, this will be fine or that'll be fine. I am questioning that. I really do think that that we are going to begin to understand that we are all more connected than any one of us wants to admit. And so things are getting messy. So that's a long way of saying things are getting very messy in the academy. And I hope they get messier. I think they need to.
Thank you, Paula. Dr. Muhammed, given what Paula just shared, speaks about health equity, where does this fit within the domains of policymaking? And if you can talk a little bit about the framework.
Yeah. I really, again, Paul, I really like what you're saying here about the othering. You're reminding us, right, that step one, almost always, of the process of genocide, of dehumanization, of destruction, is the requirement, is the sort of psychological and cognitive dissonance requirement to other the thing. Right, so we call it another name, right? We shift it in consciousness in order to create space so that I can other it and therefore destroy, humiliate, extract, right? From and so part of what I believe is at the root of effective and what I might even add revolutionary policy, right? And a framework is really the centering of our work in togetherness, right? Not only with people, but with planet as well. So I've been really getting excited about this emergent strategy approach called biomimicry, right? And that is sort of looking at natural phenomena and trying to understand sort of social context for it, right? So if we look at oak trees and starlings, they tell us something about the organization of community, right? And support and accountability. If we look at dandelions, and I've been really into dandelions. It's really funny when I say that, right, to folks, but when I've been really into dandelions because they are misrecognized as weeds, right? And therefore destroyed and attacked, right? But yet they can teach us a lot about hardiness and resilience. And so as someone who works with marginalized populations, specifically young people, right, who are often misrecognized as weeds to be thrown away, to be attacked, to be destroyed, right? But yet they can teach us a lot about hardiness, about resiliency. So when we, for instance, take biology in the natural world, and we can begin to understand our own social phenomenon through that lens, it minimizes the otherness, right? So what I'd like to suggest is also this intersectional approach, right? That let us not think that we're talking about the environment and planet without talking about justice and equity, right? That this intersectional approach, just like when we think about intersectionality around all of the social justice movements, that race and gender and socioeconomic status, all of that play into it. It is important, though, that we need to consider privilege, right? When we start talking about sustainability, right, and plant-based diets, right, and this and that, we need to consider what even some of those policies have on under-resourced communities, right? So not just the deleterious effects of climate change or greenhouse gas effect, right, on communities, but also potable water, right? And then what is the cost and supports needed in order for communities to step up and create and have voice into the kind of change that needs to happen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Lucy, you've been heavily involved in the restorative justice movement in the UK, particularly focused on victim rights. What are your thoughts on activating a global community, a global constituency committed to structural shifts in the ecological footprint? What would an environmental justice campaign built on restorative principles look like?
Yeah, I did. I thought about this and I thought it would be a question. We would start with a question, which is, what is it that you would like to be known? So what is it that you as an individual, what is it that you as a community would like to be known? And do you explore that as a group? And that opens up the conversation, and it's a kind of question that allows different voices to come in and to really, really listen. And I think there's for me, what I've learned through my campaigning experience is we're very fast to reach solutions and impose solutions. And in order for everyone to come with us, so I always say to the kids when I go hiking, I take kids hiking, is that you always need to be able to walk at the pace of the slowest in order to ensure that you all get over the mountain safely. Because if there's a small group of you way behind, the fog can come down and you lose everyone. And also you don't move as fast because you have to keep stopping and waiting for the people behind. And it's the people in front who always dictate the pace, who always set the agenda, who always decide when you're going to stop. And that can be very challenging for particularly people who are privileged, and I count myself amongst them. You know, I have a warm house, I have a nice place to live, because you're in a rush to get a solution and get it over and through. And you have to, my learning comes from working with people who have lived experience of pain and trauma, who tell me, you're not the one, Lucy, to come up with the solution. We're the ones that know. And you have to be humble and also give time for looping so that you're not in a linear trajectory, you're in a looping trajectory. And for me, that speaks to community, because community doesn't walk in a linear direction. It's a kind of living, pulsing, changing group. So I'm now losing track of the question, but that was the first thing I wanted to say. And I think that restorative justice, just to kind of speak to the othering part that Malik was talking about, is that it reduces distance. But both Paula and Malik, so it brings people closer and it makes it harder to other. So when we have a classic one-to-one, like you hit me, that hurts, and the other person's like, yeah, I hit you, so let's talk about it. You bring people together, and it's far, far harder to hate each other. It's far, you see the humanity in each other. And so, I mean, an example, which is a really trivial example, but I create channels where people who have lived experience of crime, who've been through restorative justice, go and speak to policymakers at a national level. And you can see the distance where they're going, oh, you just get on with it. We're not bothered. I've got this really important financial meeting. To get that person in front of them changes ideas and changes minds and moves hearts. And, I've seen that happening. And that reduction in distance, I think, is a very restorative, really important aspect of restorative justice, because it also holds people accountable. I'm going to stop in a minute, but it holds people accountable. And that, for me as well, is really important, that we support each other in accountability for not pulling up the dandelion, for calling people to account for, not throwing litter everywhere on our beautiful spaces, for respecting each other. And I've just got one example that I came up with, which is in London in 2014, a young girl died from asthma. And the family were told that's because she had asthma. And her mother, who's the most extraordinary woman called Rosamund Kissy Deborah, made legal history when, for the first time, air pollution was recorded as a cause of an individual death in the UK. They're a Black family living in a poor area, in a very polluted area in London, and the levels of nitrogen dioxide was so high that they couldn't breathe properly. I mean, and the scale of the crisis was a public health emergency. And now the local authorities and the state have to take account for that. Now, we don't just want to shift it to somewhere else And that's the really transformative part for me. And I'm going to leave it there, but it's not just saying we don't want it in our backyard. We're saying, how can we all live better? Because my well-being is only as good as, you know, the well-being of the people who live in those, you know, in those polluted areas.
Lucy, thank you so much. Paula, what is the role of higher education in activating a planetary health community around the world and here in the United States?
I just want to take a moment and underline a point that Lucy made, or that I heard you make, and I've heard Malik make it as well. And it's this idea of a reduction in distance. No, a reduction in distance. And so I think, and so now I'm going to make the segue to what I would like to see higher education do, and what's happening in some places is, rather than being academic about the world that exists outside higher education, to clean its own house first. And there's a reduction in distance in that, you know, it's not about, you know, the world out there outside the ivory tower, but in fact, there are a couple of things that are happening. One is an international Okanagan Charter for Health Promoting Universities. And it's an international call. Many countries and institutions are involved, but it really asks the institution itself to look at itself and to see whether or not all the peoples in the institution are getting equal access to the ability to thrive. It pulls in sustainability work and equity work and health work, but then it also says engage with the community around the institution in very meaningful ways. So reduce the distance between faculty, staff, and students. You know, reduce the distance between silos of you know, of the environmental studies program and the Office of Equity, and the Office for Sustainability, and the healthcare delivery system, which we will not even get into. But this idea of higher education can reduce the distance, and the charter is one way to begin to have a floor plan for that. I also think, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later, is you know, institutions of higher education talk about teaching and research and service. And I really do begin to see some change in curriculum, that, you know, what is important to learn. And because honestly, students are coming to us asking different questions, which is good. It's good for the academy. But the idea of, you know, what does a curriculum look like that brings in the concept of othering and doesn't just take it as the way it has to be, you know? Martin Buber's I Thou is just one point of view, people. It's just one point of view. So anyway, I do hope the curriculum changes and we're able to begin to truly engage in conversation around what the world could be.
Thank you, Paula. Dr. Muhammed, what should be the role of BIPOC and Indigenous leadership here in the United States and abroad?
Yeah, great question. You know, I'm excited about this one, right? So I think part of it is a responsibility that we in the, you know, Black people of color, Indigenous community have, is to call out institutional betrayal, right? So hopefully we're familiar with that term, right? But this idea of, right, institutions betraying the very trust and sanctity of the people that are dependent upon them. And so that's essentially what we're underscoring here, right? That you know, the greatest damage to the planet and to the people are done by institutions, systems, and structures, not by individuals, right? And so therefore, to call out institutional betrayal, especially by the people that are the most harmed. And so I think that that's part of what we have, but also I think it's I think, like for instance, I come from a tradition, and some of us do, right? But I come from a tradition where we didn't necessarily have access and usage of terms like, environmentalism and conservation, but I would get yelled at or worse for not closing the door and wasting electricity, right? You better close that door, boy, and not let my heat out or my air out, right? We didn't have bumper stickers about water conservation, right? But we had barely enough hot water in the house for all the people that lived under that roof. So we had to take quick showers when we could get them, right? That we reused shopping bags for book covers and gift paper, right? Because we had to. We would hand down clothes and recycle clothes, right? And not contribute to the global waste of the fabric, of the fashion industry, because we had to, not necessarily out of an heightened consciousness around the planet's health, but really as an act of love for family and for each other, right? And so what I think we have a responsibility to do in this work, as in all struggles, is really look to the work and to the practices of communities, right, that are the most disadvantaged, right? Because as we know, just in this restorative work, that those who are the most harmed have the potential for the greatest ideas, understanding, and reconciliation and restoration of what needs to happen now in order to make things right. And if we can't make things right, what needs to happen to make things better? So I was first sort of thinking about some of this work around planetary health and well-being all the way back to 1994, y'all, right? And it was a song by a rap group called Arrested Development. And it was on this amazing album called Zingalamiduni in 1994. And the album was called United Minds of America. And what they said was, if you can, please recycle. First of all, that's interesting, right? Not a demand, but a request, but an ask. If you can, please recycle. Even the people in the hood, please recycle. It's not our fault that they went psycho, them meaning industry execs who flex for profit. That, for me, is this really interesting approach all the way back to me, right, in 1994 and some of my college days, really thinking about how do we engage with communities of color, BIPOC folks, right? And then the last thing I want to say is we can look at terms, like heat islands and food deserts, right, to really describe how the impact on the environment, impacts health equity, and that really the continuation of violence and destruction of the planet also correlates and corresponds with those people in that area who are deemed worthless, right? Who are deemed not worthy of their own health. And then not to mention the violence and human trafficking, the rape, the homicide in the manned and the worker camps surrounding many of these areas which are extracting and destroying the environment, right? So we see this kind of work negatively impacting BIPOC folks. So as those who are most harmed, we have the most opportunity to give voice. We should, at least.
Thank you so much. Lucy, building on what Paula and Dr. Muhammed just shared, what are some of the existing disparities and structural inequities from where you sit?
Well, I mean, the example I gave earlier is really where I go back to, and this is sort of through intergenerational inequality that we see the Black and racialized minorities being put in areas where there is, big landfill, where there's where there's terrible pollution, where there's really awful housing. We haven't mentioned that housing, where there's it's overcrowded. The schools are bad, the whole, and then it becomes a kind of, and then they're saying, well, let's, like I mentioned before, let's move that landfill rather than let's not make the landfill in the first place. In some ways, I sit in rooms where we talk about criminal justice, and we talk about solutions for criminal justice. And the criminal justice system is actually a highly punitive way to particularly young Black men. It's just full, our prisons are full of young Black men. And there's just a disproportionate number in there. But is the room full of solution makers, full of those people? No, it's full of white middle-aged men and women making decisions about those young people's lives. And for me, that just is wrong. And the solution that people are going to come up with is going to just do more harm. So for me, you know, we have to start, if we're going to make a difference, if we're going to open up spaces, we have to challenge that sort of inequality, and people have to let go of power in order to make a change. I did just want to give one example. So for me, disparity and kind of the institutional, talking about institutional betrayal, but I might have got this wrong, Malik, so do, you know, I don't want to sort of take your words and misapply them, but particularly given the context of the question. But in 2019, a Yorkshire water company paid out a lot of money under EU law because they'd polluted the water course around where they lived. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think that the structural inequality there, less about race, but more about institutions paying off and it being called restorative. So it's like, okay, so we'll pay you thousands and thousands of pounds. Were the community asked what they wanted? Were they asked what they wanted? What they wanted was to stop the sewage never to happen again. And I don't know what else they wanted because they were never asked. You know, and for me, that I think that's what comes to mind for me, is this sort of, oh, we know what you need and we know what you want, you know, and then also we're going to pay our way out of this. You know, we're going to sort of, and then you'll go away because you're rather irritating and you're kind of making my life a bit tricky. And I can't sit in, you know, as I go back to that previous example, I can't sit in this nice, cozy, warm room speaking to people like me about what we should do about that rather tricky issue, you know, about lots of, you know, people being, you know, allowing the system to be violent to them and to keep them incarcerated or to keep that cycle going.
Thank you. And the final question, starting with you, Paula. The Planetary Health Alliance, a consortium of over 340 universities, non-governmental organizations, research institutes, and government entities from around the world, says, hold that justice, equity, and compassion must be the driving forces behind a future of planetary health for all. So the question is, how can restorative practices be applied as a driving force behind the future of planetary and community health for all? Starting with Paula.
So looking at the work that's happening out of the Alliance, I was really struck by the framework, the planetary health education framework, and the pieces that are in there but are not explicit. And in my little journey around restorative practices, I had people say to me, you know, don't say you're doing restorative practice. Don't say you're doing restorative, just do it. And I don't know, maybe it's just the academy, but I feel like we need to name it. And so in the framework, there are things like talking about equity and social justice, and talking about systems and the interconnectedness. And the question in there was, to me, was was who do we want to be? And so that framework, I guess, when I looked at it critically, and restorative is in it, but it's never explicit. And so I guess my call would be, we're going to need to be explicit that that's the way we're coming at things. And so I'm hopeful that as that affects curriculum, which I imagine it will, that there is some conversation about, which philosophical framework we're really working from. Because justice can be applied, and I mean, Lucy's just talked about that, right? Justice can be applied and people can think it's justice. It does not feel like justice. So to really begin to be much more explicit with being restorative, with a reduction in distance, and sitting with the uncomfortableness that comes with that. So some thoughts on that framework.
Thank you, Paula. Same question, Dr. Muhammed. How can restorative practices be applied as a driving force behind the future of planetary and community health for all?
Yeah, I firmly believe that that the restorative path really is the path, right? I do want to challenge us though, as folks that are committed, that are interested, that we drunk the Kool-Aid around restorative practices, right? That we believe in this work, right? I do want to more than suggest, I want to assert, right, that that our restorative practices must be aimed at revolutionary change and not reform, right? For far too long, right, those of us who have offered training, those of us who have been engaged in this work, those of us who have been promoting this as answers have really shied away from naming, being explicit around systems of destruction, systems that dehumanize and destroy, calling a thing, right? People have too often left from being in front of us with those of us who have the privilege of the microphone, and they have not even questioned their own power and privilege and bias. And so what we've got to do is orient our restorative practices towards revolution and not reform. And so Lucy, for me, really reminded us of that, right? That a thing could be called restorative when in fact it never at all engaged those who were harmed, right? That's not restoration. In fact, this is the co-opting of restorative practices by the very systems that are causing the harm themselves. So I get to not only do the harm, but I get to name how that harm needs to be quote unquote repaired when in fact not being repaired. And I use the exact same vehicles of paying people off, of co-opting systems, structures, politicians, et cetera. So for me, if we're going to apply a restorative approach to this, which I absolutely believe that we need to, it needs to be revolutionary, right? That's rooted heavily in connection plus challenge, right? For that kind of change. I think also, if we're really going to think about restoration as it relates to planetary health and community well-being, a cornerstone of any restorative process is the discontinuation of harm, right? That we're playing games when we get into a restorative conversation and there isn't a commitment to discontinue harm, right? And so if there isn't a commitment to discontinuing harm, and we know that there isn't, right, when it comes to planetary destruction and community harm, right, then what is a restorative process for those of us who have been harmed? There's still a value in it. At the micro level, it's people coming together that have been harmed in order to voice their story, to articulate some of their needs. How can our needs get met? But then more importantly, how can we organize to continue to fight the struggle, et cetera, right? So on the macro level, I believe the same thing needs to happen, right? That we need to create restorative spaces and places, right? So that folks who have been harmed, that continue to be harmed, that Mother Earth's voice as well shows up, right, in that conversation, so that we can at least voice our harm and then activate our resources for activists, advocates, organizers, right, to be able to bring about the kind of change, demand it, force it, fight for it. Yeah, so I think that's what restorative practices gives us, sort of a beacon and a pathway forward if we're really going to be serious about the kind of work that we need to do.
Yeah,
Thank you. Lucy,
yeah, I mean, I concur. I mean, the word for me is liberation, because it's not just about going back, which restorative sometimes feels like you're kind of putting something back, whereas I think liberation is sort of, it's kind of let's live dignified lives and let's include everybody. And so one of the things that also gets me really angry is when people say, oh, we're doing this for victims, you know, like there's a victim service. I'm like, do they speak, can they do the work in Spanish? You know, do they understand what it's like to be a refugee in this country who's come across the boat in a small, come across our tiny waterway from Europe in a small boat? You know, can they do restorative justice in a way that is contextualized? But liberation, so let's think about it, like, where do we want to live? What's creative? What's innovative? And I think for me, that empowers me to be positive and to live restoratively as much as I can. So in the organization I run, Why Me, we try to work restoratively. It's always work in progress. We try to deal with conflict restoratively and work with other organizations in a way that where we equip ourselves to deal with conflict or misunderstanding. And for me, that could be a way to think about how we might work globally, where we support each other through a network of restorative conversations. That can be safe spaces to talk about, I feel intergenerationally harmed by my Jewish background where my father escaped from the Holocaust. You know, that's maybe a place where I need to go. But for others, you know, there's other safe spaces for people and spaces where we come together and support each other, because the fight is a big fight. It's a big fight. I shouldn't say that, but you know, there's a lot to deal with. There's a lot of harm to address. And I think we need to build capacity, knowledge, skills, and resources, and give them and be transparent and generous. And then the communities who might be empowered to be able to use them can use them, take them and use them for themselves and go, no, we don't want that, or yes, we want it, but we're going to use it like this. So we don't do restorative justice to people somehow. And I also feel that there's going to be lots of different ways that we think the planet can be healthy, but to find ways where we intersect and can agree and take action. And the thing I was going to refer back to was, I think in 1990, there was this sort of letter in the States from Black and minoritized people to the big green organizations saying, you're missing us out of this conversation. You're talking for us. And what happened there was they came together to make a change together. So they put aside their differences, whatever they may be, and they challenged white-dominated environmental organizations to take account that they weren't inclusive. So yeah, that I think we need specific objectives and to come together to agree those.
Thank you all so much. This is, wow, this has been such a powerful discussion, but we're not over yet. At this time, I would like to check in with the questions from our attendees posted in the Q&A. And so Keith Hickman, who is the IIRP Executive Director of Collective Impact, is serving as our Q&A moderator today. Keith.
Yeah, wow is right. I'm sitting there with chills, man. This is phenomenal. Thank you all. So we have several questions, and I'll just go ahead and jump right in and start with the first one. Question: do you believe that for any of the panelists, but do you believe that the increase in need for mental health services as a result of the COVID pandemic will impact the well-being of the planet? Are unhealthy individuals more or less likely to harm the environment?
I can maybe begin, if that's okay. I think yes, right? I think that there's a strong correlation between us getting more psychologically well and healthy, right? And increasing our capacity to be able to care for others, including the environment, right? So I think that is true. I worry about the inverse, though. I worry about pathologizing those who create destruction in the planet and harm to the environment, and putting a mental health diagnosis on them, right? So I don't know in the DSM-5 if there is, anti-climate diagnosis, right? I don't think if that's necessarily the case. And I think that what does intersect and primarily what drives harm to the environment is anti-human systems like capitalism, right? And other forms of commodification. And so, so yes, I think the need for an increase in mental health services as a result of COVID pandemic or otherwise will increase and impact the well-being of the planet. I do want us to not necessarily think that those who might have a mental health diagnosis are harming the environment more, or that those who are harming the environment all have a mental health diagnosis outside of greed and commitment to to anti-human systems and planet systems.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in and say I would just, I would need to really deconstruct that question, because I think there's a lot of, even the way the DSM and everything is put together, there's a lot of what I want to say, othering that happens. And so I do think that that we have that I would say that the mental health crisis, the feeling of feeling disconnected, is probably somewhat resonant on what's going on with the planet as well. But I'm not going to make any jumps about causality. There's some interesting relationships there. I don't know what they are.
Okay, I have another question. Our previous language was attending to the social determinants of health, SDOH, but more recently we are framing this as community health. Is there a difference?
From a public health point of view, social determinants of health are factors for causality, and community health is a solution. So they're really, I think of them as very different sides of an equation. People try to measure community health, and it gets reductive really quickly, because we don't tend to think about capacity as something that people share. We go to the individual very quickly. And I would say that if we looked, there are measures of community health that are communal. But I can't, they're not the same thing. Social determinants of health are a way of understanding something more than a biobehavioral frame. That the gene, you get what you deserve because of the way you behave, or you get what you deserve because of the biology that you've been exposed to. We know that's not true. That it's much more complicated than that. So, any other thoughts on that, Malik? I saw your head nodding.
Yeah. I love how you just put that, right, Paula, that, social determinants of health are factors of causality, right? And then when we think about community health, it provides the opportunity for us to think of it more comprehensively, right? Calling into the conversation factors like, that aren't commonly spoken of in the Western mind, right? Like religiosity, right? Familial connections, right? Some of those opportunities for us to really think about what are all of the things that make up the totality of the health of the community, and the planet being a member of that community as well. So I really like how you said that community health is more of an orientation towards the solution, whereas social determinants of health give us a frame, and it's only a frame, but give us a frame to be able to understand the problem holistically.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know time.
Go ahead.
Keith,
Go ahead, Paula.
Keith, I know time is short, and I just want to make sure I get one point in. And
you have time. Don't worry about it.
Well, I'm thinking
I'm
thinking a lot, and it keeps coming back to me, so I have to put it out there. In my baby world of restorative, listening keeps coming back up, and in being raised as an eldest child in a highly performative family, listening was not something that we valued. and so I guess when I think about planetary health and this conversation we are having, I would challenge us to spend, and this is going to sound very Southern California, but I'm going to put it out there. Spend a little time listening to the planet. You know, sit your butt down and listen and see what it's telling you. Because it has some things to say, and it talks differently in different places. And what you hear is different. What you hear is different. Something that has native trees is going to sound a whole lot different than concrete. So spend some time. So you know, we can go back to questions, but I needed to get that in.
No, thank you. Please, thank you for putting that in there and putting that out there in the space. It's 8 o'clock.
Il est 8 heures. La session se termine.
That's our translation. So it's 8 o'clock. We close the session at 8:20. We have a little time for a few more questions and then final remarks from our panelists. To what extent is our environment crisis hopelessly entangled in wealth disparity? In the same way that this question contextualized in the same way that Dr. King concluded that we can't address racism without addressing economic injustice. Is it fair to say that we can't effectively address the environmental crisis without challenging and dismantling financial systems of abusive inequities? What are a few targets you would advocate challenging and dismantling? Kind of all questions wrapped up in one.
That's a good one. I mean, I was poised to answer the question before. Yeah, I don't think it's my job to say that in a way. And I think one of the issues is that who decides, you know, so XR, which is a radical protest group in the United Kingdom, has been criticised, and they sit on roads, they occupy oil wells, you know, they go and glue themselves to aircraft. The criticism is that they are largely white, middle-class people who've decided that that's what they think is the way to do it. So lots of people cheer from the sidelines, but some people are angry that they made that decision to behave in that way and to choose the targets that they think are the right targets. And so I've got my views, but I think that we need to have a wider discussion about it and involve more people. So to speak to the question above that, one of the things that WhyMe, the NGO that I run, does is we go and work in communities, and we equip them with restorative justice, and we develop restorative justice so that they can use it to work within their community and then decide for themselves how they want to use it, both on an individual basis and to develop for their community. Yeah, so that was my contribution on that.
Great. And taking that question that Lucy's talking about, Malik, if you want to respond, and I'm sure Paula will be back in a second. What are your thoughts on how to engage the most disfranchised populations? These concepts are widely discussed and known by those who have the privilege to be part of these conversations. However, I'm not sure it reaches the majority. How do we do this? And you could build on the points that Lucy or add your own, please.
Yeah. I just going back to that, the question around you know, the link between environmental crisis and wealth disparity. You know, I think the comment was made there about hopelessly linked. I'd like to reframe that a little bit. I don't know if it's hopelessly linked. I'd like to argue that it's fortunately linked, right? Because what I'm suggesting there is that we need to have an intersectional view, right, of environmental and planetary crisis and wealth and economic disparity, right? Because, for instance, and this is really, really good, right? Because the question referenced Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. his fight was, of course, for civil rights and human rights, right? But it's only when he made that connection to economic disparity and launched the Poor People's Campaign that he became, as well as his stance against the war in Vietnam, right? He became an enemy of the US justice system, and therefore soon after was assassinated, right? So it's when he began to make the link of racism to economic disparity, right? Explicitly with bravery and coming out and naming the names, maybe not all the names, but some of the names, right? Naming the challenges there that he rose in prominence of being really someone who was a revolutionary, not a reformist, but revolutionary against all forms of insane destruction. And so I think that fortunately for us, let's talk about the intersectionality of those. I absolutely agree that the two are connected. And that we ought to really have our sights on the dismantling of all of it. You know, how do we reach you know, marginalized communities? I think first we've got to go in with an open curiosity around learning, right? We say often that what's better than us bringing the circle to young people, right, is actually being invited into their own. Because what we have inside of indigenous communities and people who are marginalized all around the world are these conversations. We just don't have the ears to hear them. We're not speaking the language, right? And it's better to whisper in their language than yell in our own. And so therefore we should show up in these communities with such an open level of curiosity that they invite us into the conversation so that we can first learn what are the indigenous practices that are more in harmony with the environment, and then, you know, hopefully get guidance around how we might be able to take those to maybe a bit more scale. I think coming in with that level of humility is so important, as well as acknowledge right up front where our privilege is, right? I think nothing opens more for marginalized communities than for folks to at least acknowledge where some of the privilege is, and then say, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna shut up, and I'm gonna listen more than I'm gonna talk, right? And then begin to go from there. I think that's where we build.
This is wonderful. So that's all the questions I'm gonna take right now because I want to have time for closing remarks. So Gina, I hand it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, we've almost come to the end of our session, and I'd like to close by giving each of you just a few short minutes for final words, starting with Paula, and then we'll hear from Dr. Muhammed and end with Lucy.
I think I shared my final words. So I'm going to pass.
Yeah, I think for me is maybe that sharing that I started with, and that is that while I haven't named myself, right, as an environmentalist or an activist who's fought for planetary justice, there is a deep commitment that I have for the community, for people. And so in thinking about that, it's a half step, right? It is maybe not even a half step, but a broadening and a deepening of understanding of my role as someone who's committed to social justice and organizational revolutionary change, that my responsibility is inextricably linked to my brothers and sisters who are fighting, right? And that part of the battlefield that is looking at the planet and climate, right? And so I think what I really would like to offer is the opportunity for us to see each other, to really see each other and honor the work that we are doing and seeing how it is so connected. Yeah, reduce the distance.
I mean, that was brilliant. I have loved being part of this panel. I've learned so much from you, Paula, and so much from you, Malik. My head is buzzing. I'm even more determined to keep going. I think the thing that comes to me is to step bravely into the world and not be too worried about, am I going to do this wrong? Have got the right, but always to be asking with the curiosity that Malik's talked about, the listening, what is it that you want to be known? You know, what I'm really listening to you. and to be humble when there's criticism, you know, when there's feedback, which is a bit hard to take, because otherwise we're just passive. And I think for me, there's so much energy in the world. There's such a potential for creative and innovative solutions to what goes on. We have to be in allyship, reach out to each other. And that's what I'm taking away from today. And I camp with children in wild places in my holidays, and we sit in circle and we sit on the ground, and it's just so moving because those children start to feel connected. Many of them come from cities and they just don't have the chance to go and be in a space which is different and which is alive with trees and grass and fresh water to jump in. And I think just simple acts like that are truly restorative, and in some cases, for some children, transformative when they go back into their community.
Well, thank you, Paula Swinford, Dr. Malik Muhammed, and Lucy Jaffé for joining us today. And thank you all for attending. I must say personally, I feel challenged and inspired and invited and fired up. And I'm just overwhelmed. Thank you so much. Also, thanks again to our conference sponsor, Open Society Foundation, and AgVisor Pro, our event sponsor, for their generous financial contributions to the conference. Remember to complete your survey right after this session. Also check out our on-demand sessions, community exhibitor booths, and research poster sessions located in your attendee hub. And please join our small group conversations immediately following this session. This is an opportunity for follow-up discussion about this session.